Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome to the Alter Ego podcast. A little bit of a special here to talk about Kang the Conqueror. I am your host, Jack Austin. With me, as always, Mr. Ryno. How are you?
What's going on? You pointed the opposite way, by the way.
I just
you
realized as I did it, I pointed the opposite direction.
That's all right. It's okay. We all make mistakes.
I'll
edit that out.
Here we are. I'll cut that part out in post. Anyway, so obviously, big point of contention, big guy to be talking about here, Kang the Conqueror, because a lot of people, when Thanos was first introduced, didn't know much about Thanos. And I assume it's kind of the same now for Kang the Conqueror. So
I would agree. I would agree 100%.
Yeah, this is a great guy to kind of break down in some of the complexities of him and who he is and kind of what makes him tick. We've seen a variant of him if you watched Loki season 1, who I think I know who that is, but it's a variant of Kang. And at the end of that, if you watch that, spoilers for Loki, if you're watching this, I'm surprised that you would be spoiled at this point, but Sylvie, the variant of Loki, kills He Who Remains, or the variant of Kang the Conqueror, or as he's known, Nathaniel Richards. And that's a big context clue there for how he's going to impact the MCU. That Richards' last name is because he is a direct descendant or relative, whatever you want to call it, of Reed Richards, who is the leader of the Fantastic Four.
And one of the most brilliant minds that Earth 616 has, or a lot of variant Earths have as well.
Exactly. In their respective universes, typically the Reed Richards of the world are the smartest men alive.
Yep.
And that is one of the few minds that trumps the Tony Starks, the T'Challas, anybody but maybe Vision, who computes faster than the human brain does. But
I mean, Reed is up there with Dr. Doom in terms of intellect and intelligence.
Right. Which is why they play off each other so well.
I do think, and I'm not going to sidebar too much because I want to dive into the origins of Kang, but I do think him being a descendant of Reed Richards plays into the storyline going forward with Phase 5. I do think we see that interaction, whether it be in Ant-Man or in future pictures with Kang in it. I do think we see that interaction.
And now, just like that kind of may be a throwaway for those of you who aren't very familiar with Marvel, and there are many, 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 many characters. The Fantastic Four are known as the first family of Marvel. They are the top tier team. They are always involved in world ending or cataclysmic events. Typically, the Fantastic Four are right there in the middle. And they are a team that we as fans have been clamoring for a very, very long time. Yes, we have the 2 iterations of the Fantastic Four in Rise of the Silver Surfer and the original Fantastic Four, which I'm not a huge fan of those. I've been waiting for Marvel and Feige to get their hands on this team and really bring them to the green screen, to the screen, and kind of do them justice. So Kang is a great intro to that. And I think not only do they hint at the Fantastic Four in this movie, we may even see them. We may see versions of them. We may see something of them showing up to help Ant-Man.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't know. Obviously, I don't think we get the entire team, but I do think we see, whether it be a variant or the actual Reed Richards that ends up being Earth 616 Reed Richards, I think we get him in this movie.
I do too, and I don't think it's John Krasinski, to be honest with you.
No, it's not going to be. The rumor right now, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but the rumor right now is that the new character Quaz that's in the Ant-Man trailer is, in fact, Reed Richards.
Yes, that is the big thing, because we mentioned that Nathaniel Richards, who is Kang the Conqueror, is actually Reed Richards, and he has been kidnapped from the timeline. Now, this is a complete theory, not proven, not a fact, just something that a lot of folks on TikTok and some of the message boards for the Marvel spaces have been kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Hinting at or kind of theorizing.
Theorizing is a great word. I mean, we've gotten this since day one with the very first Iron Man movie. A lot of people will theorize, jump to conclusions. Some of them hold water. Some of them are so outlandish and far-fetched. It's like, how do you even come up with this? This one, I think, has some merit to it. I think there is a good possibility that we end up seeing him be Kang's, long lost relative, descendant, however you want to put it, in this
Right.
movie.
And I think the reason that Kang has kidnapped him or taken him from the timeline is because of his incredible intellect.
Yep. Yep.
So who knows with that? But let's not focus on the Fantastic Four. Let's talk about Kang the Conqueror. Now, in Loki, he who remains says, wait till you meet my variants. And he wants to talk about how many of them there are. And he kind of hints at something very terrible. And now, in this context, he's already a bad guy. He's already somebody who has killed countless people to keep his perfect timeline intact. And he says, you think I'm bad? There are people worse than me.
Yeah, there are me's that are worse than me.
Yeah. And he's hinting at just how incredibly powerful some of his variants are, and most comic book enthusiasts knew exactly who he was talking about. Now, let's talk a little bit about his origins and kind of where he came from.
Sure. He's from the 31st century. The weird thing about Kang, like the first couple appearances you get out of him, you don't know that he's Nathaniel Richards right away. He obviously does not become Kang the Conqueror until a later iteration of his story. He actually, the first time he fights the Avengers, he is the Crimson, what is it called?
Yeah, I saw that too.
I had it written down. The Scarlet
Centurion.
Yes, Scarlet Centurion, excuse me, gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, 31st century guy that he actually stumbles upon time traveling tech that was created by Victor Von Doom, who is another relative of his, a rumored relative of his. And that's what initially kicks off everything with Kang. I mean, one of his first trips was to ancient Egypt where he becomes a pharaoh.
Right.
He was
Rama Tut then.
Yeah, he was interested in all of the timelines. He wanted to see everything, wanted to learn everything, and it wasn't until he sought out finding Victor Von Doom to find out if he was a relative of his or not, that's when he finally stumbles upon the Avengers for the first time, and things really start kicking off with his character.
What I was going to say is also another thing that he's known for, which is what makes him dangerous, is not only his technology, not only his brain, but traveling across not only time, but certain realities and things like that, and collecting, for lack of a better term, BMFs or bad motherfuckers, and calling them to his side to be his henchmen. So he's gone throughout history and said, okay, here are the people that I need to have behind me. And so it's not just him that you need to worry about.
Yeah, it was really Kang's character that kicked off the multiversal idea in Marvel. I mean, they really didn't dive into a multiverse until it was Kang who not only time traveled, but traveled interdimensionally to other universes and other timelines. So, I mean, this goes back to the 60s and 70s when he was really big in the golden age of comics. That's when the multiverse idea really started to gain ground, gain traction with Marvel. And it was brilliant. It was a brilliant idea. It's what introduced us to all the different kinds of variants, not just of Kang, but we've had several different variants of all of our favorite heroes, and it's because of this original storyline with Kang is why we have that.
Do you think he's why we have the Earth 616 and the Earth 6311 and all the other different iterations and worlds? You think that's because of Kang?
I think it's what inspired that. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to have a guy that has different variants of himself, why not branch that out to other characters? Right. If there's a variant of Kang out there, there's obviously a variant of Wolverine, a variant of Spider-Man, a variant of Reed Richards, a variant of Spider-Woman, all these.
Wonder Woman, yeah, for sure.
I mean, you could, yeah, but I think it's what inspired all of the different Earths and all of the different universes out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he is a perfect person to introduce right now, especially with the things going on behind the scenes with Fox and Disney and Marvel and all these properties starting to come home to roost. And that's where they've done it, I think, better than DC, because they've said, okay, so we've got all these people coming in. Let's introduce Kang, because now all of these other characters that we have, it's kind of like what they did with Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. They called them experiments, genetically modified, instead of calling them mutants. So instead of saying, yeah, this is 100% going to be your X-Men, your Wolverine, your Fantastic Four, these are variants. That means they all exist. That means in their own timelines, all the things that have happened with them are canon. But to the MCU as we know it, They can still exist, but they're variants. Spider-Man really is the big thing that kind of kicked that off.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And
I
go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought that was a very brilliant way to, with the acquisition of Fox and the acquisition of other properties, it's a very brilliant way to bring them in and, for lack of better terms, kill off their characters in order to introduce new characters.
Right.
It's a great way for Marvel to avoid saturating the content. We've seen Spider-Man 3 different times. We've seen the X-Men multiple different times. We're going to see Fantastic Four again. It's a great way to avoid people getting sick of seeing the same people.
Sure. And it also broadens the horizons because the Fantastic Four are not a necessarily Earth-based team. They do. Yeah. They work out of the Baxter Building, and they are definitely a big deal, but they do a lot of stuff out in space. They do other dimensional stuff. So this is a good thing to add in. And Kang, as I said, is the great segue to bringing all these people in. Now, differences between him and Thanos. Let's say specifically MCU Thanos and MCU Kang.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of differences, and we touched on this on one of the episodes of Alter Ego. I think the message that is behind each villain is wildly different.
Yeah.
Of course, Thanos was a killer. Thanos sought out to end half of civilization as you know it, not just on Earth. I mean, you're talking about a universal scale where 50% of the people were to die, but the purpose behind it wasn't to dominate. It wasn't to lead. It wasn't to, be the main guy. He was doing it for resource purposes. Like, if I don't do this, everyone dies.
Yeah.
Life as we know it ends.
And so, he even says at random, it's mercy. Yeah. I'm not picking who lives and who dies.
There's no bias behind it.
Half, and here we go.
So even though he is a villain, even though he is a bad guy, you almost get to a point with Thanos, in Infinity War and Endgame, where you're almost like, man, does this guy have a point?
Right.
Is he doing what maybe should be done? Now, Kang, on the other hand, has no interest in who he kills, why he kills. The only thing he wants to do is conquer, dominate, and be the number one guy.
Order is the number one thing for Kang. It's not necessarily about conquering, but he doesn't want to have the conversation with you. You don't get the input. This is for your own good, and this is how I'm going to do it. And whether that be through brutality or whatever, Kang's not going to do that. And like back to the Thanos comparison, if you remember Infinity War, when he first has the Power Stone and he shows up and they bring him the Space Stone, that to him is when his literal spiritual quest begins. That's why he takes his armor off, because that was a quest for him to achieve as a Titan for himself. Yeah. Kang is not going to do that. Kang is going to lie, cheat, and steal to do whatever he can to get out. And this is where I think Ant-Man in the whole quantum realm is the perfect way for him to make that first jump.
Yeah, I don't think, regardless of how long we see Kang in the MCU, I mean, I don't think it's going to be as long as the Thanos storyline built up. But I don't think he's going to have that penultimate moment where he's like, this is where I achieve my vision. I think that's his motivating factor the entire time. I think he knows he's going to achieve his vision, and he's going to do whatever it takes to keep that going. Right. I mean, there's a small part where Thanos is searching for the stones. You don't know if he's going to do it. He doesn't know if he's going to do it.
He even says that. You know? He kind of says, yeah, okay. That when he sees it in Endgame, he goes, oh, destiny fulfilled. I did it. Yep, this is done, because Kang's been watching time for forever. And in the trailer, I forget Wasp's mother's character's name. Janet Van Dyne.
Janet Van Dyne. Yep, Janet Van Dyne.
She looks and says, this dude has the power and the ability to erase timelines, and he will. And we know that he will, because he who remains has been doing it himself. You know, he created the TVA. He created all that to keep that order. And you're kind of like, oh, we're already living in this thing that Kang has created. That whole, the Avengers were supposed to go back in time and do what they did. That's part of design that you didn't even realize Kang was keeping an eye on.
And I
So
think Kang. I think the reason why we don't see any kind of TVA interference with that particular storyline, because that's a huge question. Like,
yeah, where's Loki?
if Loki
Yeah,
leaving is such a interference with the timeline, why wasn't the Avengers going back in time and interference with it? I think that's because Kang knew that was coming. He knew it was going to
yeah.
happen, and that was his way to eliminate Thanos, which is probably only one of the only threats to Kang that there might be at the time.
Right, physically at least.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's amazing that there would be a reality where it's okay, where Thanos does get all 6 stones and Kang's okay with it.
Yeah, I think ultimately because he knows what happens. I don't think
Yeah,
he's worried about, being erased. Even if he is erased, they're going to go back in time and save everything. He'll come back, but there are also other variants of him that'll keep the timelines going. If that particular Kang were to die or were to be snapped out of existence, there are
Here's
also other Kangs.
another instance, or another thing to remember is even in the comic book story, Kang is not worried about dying. There are younger versions of him, the same exact Kang. He deals with time like it's nothing. He's going to visit other Kangs, and clearly, so there are other versions, and that's what I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit. Not just the Ramatut, the Scarlet Centurion, but there are other versions of characters in the comics that have been Kang the Conqueror and been that Nathaniel Richards character. And I think the one that's most important right now is the one who I think is kind of regarded as the strongest of all of them, and it's not Kang. It is the one who was He Who Remains that we saw at the TVA. That guy is the strongest of the Kangs. He said
I
it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we ultimately find out that the reason why Ant-Man Kang is in the quantum realm is because of He Who Remains.
Correct.
I think he is ultimately the reason why he is trapped, and that's why Kang needs Ant-Man's help, is to get back out of the quantum realm so he can go back to controlling the timelines.
He's trapped there, and now he knows that version, the He Who Remains, who I believe is a variant of Kang called Immortus.
Yeah, Immortus. Yep.
That is the Kang we've seen. He's most powerful. He keeps Kang in check. So now that he's gone, I think Kang is well aware that Immortus is dead, and this is his opportunity.
There's another Kang variant that we saw in the comics that I think we ultimately end up seeing, maybe not in Ant-Man, but I think we will find out that he existed in Kang Dynasty, the Avengers movie that comes out in a couple years. There was a version of a variant of a Kang that actually was just a normal person who lived during the development of the Avengers and just hid in the shadows, learned everything he could about the Avengers, learned who they were, learned their powers, their abilities. I think we see that in the future in the MCU.
And who are you referring to? I'm assuming you're talking about Iron Lad.
No, Iron Lad was a younger Kang who actually started the Young Avengers. There was another Kang variant that was just a normal guy. I can't remember if he was a part of the government or what he did for a living, but he just stayed back so he could learn everything he could about the Avengers.
Is that Mr. Griffin?
I believe so. I wasn't very knowledgeable on that storyline because I didn't read that, but
Right.
I did my research a little bit.
If you look on the Marvel website and you take a look at how many Kangs there are, it's a lot. A lot of different versions, a lot of different variants of this guy. Now, let's talk powers and abilities.
Yes.
Let's talk about things that this Kang can do. Bare bones, he's a guy. You saw him get stabbed in the chest and die from Sylvie. That's something that you need to be aware of. If that guy, which he was able to avoid everything because he was manipulating time. He knew what was going to happen. He knew what was coming. So that's why he wasn't worried about Sylvie and Loki when they showed up. He kind of let it happen and made it their choice. But if it's a fight and he doesn't have that ability to manipulate time, he's getting killed by 99% of the Avengers.
Yeah, he's just a man.
Yeah.
He's got no powers. He's got no abilities. I don't even really think he's that good of a hand-to-hand fight guy just because he doesn't need to be when he's wearing the suit.
Right.
So, yeah, he's just a normal man.
Now, the suit that he has is what cranks that character up to 11.
Yes.
It's not the same as like Thor without the hammer, because Thor without the hammer still has incredible power.
Yeah, he's still
Kang
Thor.
with the suit goes from D tier to alpha tier. He can manipulate time and space. He can manipulate technology. He can literally freeze you in time if he wanted to.
And the suit grants him obviously the superhuman strength. He does have the weapons that are a part of the suit as well. You saw that in the trailer in Ant-Man where he's blasting somebody with the gauntlets that he's wearing, the gloves, whatever you call them. Right. Another thing it grants him is almost perfect invulnerability. I mean, he could take shots from Mjolnir right to the chest, and it doesn't hurt him. It doesn't kill him,
and it doesn't move him either.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of thing. Like, think about the ability of the TVA when Loki's going in and he's in that office and he pulls out the guy, and the guy's using Infinity Stones for paperweights. Yeah. That's why. And he says time and power is different here. That's a direct result of Kang owning that space. Yep. So if somebody's going there to fight him, you're already at a disadvantage.
Big time disadvantage. Another thing that the suit grants him, and now this is in the comics, I don't know if we see this in the movie, but it would be very interesting if we do. The suit actually grants him immortality.
Right.
And the reason for that is when he is about to die, when he's on the verge of dying, his suit sends his consciousness to another body.
Yes, another version of himself.
Even if you were to kill him, you're still not technically killing him. He is still going to live on in another body where he will gain another suit, other pieces of technology, other weapons, and he'll go right back to being Kang again.
Right. So that kind of makes it next to impossible to deal with. And it also makes sense for why we're starting to see so many high power characters show up in the MCU. We've got Adam Warlock making his debut now, which is not desirable because I would have loved to have seen him during the Infinity Saga, but it's good to have him. He is a top tier power level character. Yes. We have Captain Marvel. She is also there. And don't believe the hype if you think that Scarlet Witch is gone.
Oh, no, I don't believe she's gone at all.
There's a lot of iterations where Kang is controlling the Scarlet Witch, or he is watching her very closely. I was reading there's a couple comic series where he has kidnapped Agatha Harkness, Scarlet Witch, and one other magic user who I wasn't familiar with at the time, just because he knew that one of those three entities was going to give birth to a more powerful entity than him. So he kidnaps all three of them and says, I'll wait and see.
It's going to be very interesting to see if Kang is the reason why Scarlet Witch lives, or if it's Victor Von Doom, because there's a theory behind that as well, where Victor Von Doom comes in and saves her. Well, but I don't believe she is dead.
That is the big No More Mutants arc, isn't it? That's because of Doctor Doom, because he convinces her that the mutants are who killed her children. So she says, well, no more mutants. And with those three words, all mutants everywhere disappear.
Yeah.
So I think it's still going to be a Doctor Doom thing. What a wild transition it would be to introduce Kang, and the guy who comes in to save everybody is Victor Von Doom, the enemy of
that
my
would be
enemy.
insane.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend, kind of thing, right? And so then you get a situation where Kang is defeated, but then you're sitting there staring Doctor Doom with a changed Scarlet Witch at his side.
Yeah.
What a totally incredible scene that would be.
I'm extremely interested to see how they do in fact transition from Kang Dynasty to Secret Wars. I mean, one of the things that we've been seeing trending on Twitter and on TikTok and everything is everyone is dropping rumors, hints, speculation about Secret Wars.
Yeah.
No one is talking about Kang Dynasty. No one is. Now, there was one theory that I did see that ties in Infinity War to Ant-Man and Kang Dynasty, where time in the quantum realm is a lot slower, or a lot faster, than time, in regular reality, where when everyone was snapped away for 5 years, Scott was only down there for 5 hours.
Right.
So there's a theory that the 2 hours that takes Ant-Man to happen is actually 2 years, and the final events of Ant-Man are going to be the beginning events of Kang Dynasty.
Which would be amazing.
Well, if that speculation is true, then I think at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I think you see a lot of other characters. I think we see a lot of cameos, whether it be in a cut scene or at the very end of the movie. We have to see something if that's true.
I think a version of a lot of characters, because there's a line from Kang in the trailer that, "Oh, Ant-Man, you're an Avenger? Have I killed you before?" So Kang is very familiar with them. So I think we see a lot of versions, a lot of iterations of a lot of characters die. So people were like,
Yeah, I
"Oh my
agree.
god, oh my god, Ant-Man's gonna die," or "Oh my god, Tony Stark's gonna show up and he's gonna die." You might all be right.
I think we do see an Ant-Man die.
Yeah,
I don't think the Ant-Man dies, but I think we do see an Ant-Man die.
I agree.
And I mean, it's the perfect way to set up the character. I mean, we talked about this also. Putting a lovable guy in with an unknown villain, you got to find a way to make people hate him.
Yeah, because like with Thanos, there were so many people, and you've even seen it in the MCU. For instance, Hawkeye most prominently was, the Thanos was right. A lot of people believed in what he did. Even Captain America comes in and goes, "Fewer boats, cleaner water. There's humpbacks in the Hudson."
Yeah,
And he's talking about things that he doesn't like it, but they're positive things that came from this.
it's what life was to him. So he was
Right.
finding the silver lining out of it. Yeah.
And this particular character, you won't find that.
No. No, I don't think there's going to be any joy found in what happens. And this isn't just the Ant-Man movie. This is going forward with every movie that he's a part of. There's not going to be any joy. There's not going to be any silver lining moments where they're like, well, at least we have this, or at least this is happening.
Mhm.
That's not going to be the case with Kang.
No. And I think that's a good thing. It needs to be a tonal shift. It needs to be something that crazy.
Well, it's good that they're coming out with a villain that's going to be a longer story arc villain who is a complete 180 of the last villain that we got.
Right. And
I didn't.
he will be. He will be. And it'll be interesting to see who comes in to tussle with Kang and do well. Because right now, looking at our lineup, I don't see somebody.
I don't think we see anybody really do well, but at the same time, throughout the Thanos storyline, the entire Thanos storyline, he doesn't really fight a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
His longest fight scene was probably the one against the Hulk at the beginning of Infinity War.
Yeah.
I mean, he tussles with Doctor Strange for a little bit. He tussles with Iron Man for a little bit. Now that entire sequence is longer, but there's different people.
Right. But you're right. Thanos didn't have to do a lot. He has that one run where you're talking about, where he takes on Iron Man, Spider-Man, and the Guardians, and Doctor Strange, and then when he takes on the other team by himself, taking on Captain America, Black Panther, Thor, and Bruce Banner, who's obviously not able to turn into the Hulk. So yeah, he doesn't have to do a lot, and Kang's going to be, I think, a different monster.
I would be willing to bet that we see more fight sequences with Kang in just Ant-Man, where he's physically fighting, than you do the entire continuity of Thanos combined.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, because it's only 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 7 minutes there. I think the entire Ant-Man movie is going to be Kang fighting Ant-Man. Not the entire movie, but the vast majority of it.
And I think the only person able to undo Kang is Reed Richards. Now that I'm sitting here trying to look at the lineup, who's smart enough, who's strong enough, who can do it?
I think Von Doom, you're onto something with Von Doom, but I have a wild theory for you.
Let's hear it.
What if after all of this, the person that comes to stop Kang is Kang?
Right. No, that is what he said, "You'll come back. You'll come looking for me." That's what he says in Loki.
Yeah.
You're going to need me. He goes, okay, fine. Kill me. That's fine. But you're going to need me.
And there are storylines in the comics where Kang teams up with people to fight another Kang. Now he's obviously using them as pawns to help his larger goals, but I think it's possible we see a Kang come to stop Kang.
And one of the people, or one of the entities that Kang has teamed up with in the past, is actually the Supreme Intelligence. Yeah. Which rumored is dead. That Captain, that was the whole thing for Captain Marvel, was that, the Supreme Intelligence is already dead. So it'll be very interesting to see. I think it may actually be a younger version of Kang that they're bringing in to take his place.
I agree. That's a solid theory.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't think here's the other thing. You said you don't think that he fights more than Thanos does. I think his run has to be shorter than Thanos's.
Oh, his run in terms of movies and length of the storyline, his run will be smaller than Thanos because I don't think you can do another 8 to 10 year build up to get to your final destination. You can't do that again.
Right.
That's what really kicked off the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe to begin with, and the reason why it took so long is so you could build everyone else up around him.
Mm-hmm.
We first got the first sighting of Thanos was in the first Avengers.
Yep. At the end,
We needed that development. Beyond that, we needed the Ant-Mans, we needed the Doctor Stranges, we needed the Guardians. We have them now.
Yeah.
And I don't think the teams and the families that we're waiting to see are going to matter as much. Like Fantastic Four probably will, but the X-Men don't have to be a part of the Kang storyline.
They don't have to be. No, you'll probably see one or two.
Yeah,
You might see an introduction of a Wolverine. Because I think whoever they sign on to be Wolverine, not Hugh Jackman, that character is going to be in so many properties.
I agree.
Like whoever signs on to play Wolverine, because you look at Wolverine in the comics, he's in everything.
Yeah.
He's in Avengers, he's been in Spider-Man, he's been with the Fantastic Four, he's been with the Guardians, he's been everywhere. I don't know if he's got a specific iteration where he's with the Guardians, but Wolverine is arguably the most popular X-Men on the planet, not named Professor X or Storm.
He's actually just one of the most popular characters, period. So I think they're going to ride that train long and hard, which rightfully so, they should. That's what Fox tried to do with the X-Men franchise, and that was one of the few things they did well.
Yeah. So I think another person who's going to end up playing into this, speaking of mutants, is Mr. Deadpool. We're going to see him show up and be a part of that as well.
You think he's a part of the Kang storyline?
Yeah, I do.
He's
Especially
obviously involved with the
time
TVA
travel.
somehow.
Yes, time travel in the TVA. A lot of that takes place this year.
Yeah.
So season 2 of Loki, I don't think season 2 of Loki prominently features Deadpool. I think we hear about him.
Yeah, I think we
hear
get
about- Yes, I think Deadpool will be that guy who's causing catastrophic events across the timeline.
What if we get a Ryan Reynolds cameo in Loki?
I think people would freak out, and that's all they'd be talking about.
Yeah, that would be one. I do think in the next 3 to 4 movies and series, we do get something wild to make up for the lull that was Phase 4.
It has to happen. The lull has to happen. It's very
It does.
important.
I agree.
If people don't like it. Not every single movie needs to be a home run. Not every single one needs to move the story along.
No.
Because think of how much is out there. You can't use up all your top storylines right now.
I was gonna say too, like the Spider-Mans and the Doctor Stranges, they didn't need to move the needle a whole lot with Kang.
Yeah.
They didn't need to. They just needed to set up their own character story arcs. Obviously, we have a lot more to look forward to with Doctor Strange and what happens with him in the next movie. They're already in pre-production for Spider-Man 4.
Right.
So we didn't need any kind of big Phase 5 movement out of those movies.
Right.
The only one that we really needed the movement out of was Loki, and that was a home run.
Yeah. Loki has moved the story along the line more than anything else.
And
Truly,
that's
in my
all we
opinion.
needed.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree 100%, but that's the only thing we needed. I think if you would have put more content for Kang into some of these movies and shows, we'd already be sick of Kang.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be as excited for Kang.
Right. And I think seeing that and knowing he's the ever-present guy, like I've said on the Alter Ego normal weekly shows, there are Easter eggs, there are little nuggets that we haven't noticed are nuggets yet.
Well, I mean, that was the case with almost every movie in the Thanos storyline.
Yeah.
I mean, it took 3-4 years to realize what they were, but once you did, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was one that we talked about specifically with Shang-Chi, because you look at the quantum realm machinery and things that's going in there, the rings that are in there. We think that the rings might be from the quantum realm. And hey, there was that thing at the end where Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner are like, these are calling to something. They're
Yeah, they're setting
calling
out a beacon.
they're
Yep.
sending out a beacon for something. We don't know what. Bet you it's Kang. And that's why the wearer of the rings, his father, was able to stay alive for so long.
Yeah.
That's why time worked differently around Dad, because he was wearing those quantum bands.
And I think that, you know, the beacon they talk about at the end of Shang-Chi is going to tie in with the device that Scott Lang's daughter makes to communicate with the quantum realm.
Right.
Because I believe that was, in my opinion, this is just an opinion, a theory, but I think Kang was trying to communicate with the rings, wasn't able to establish a form of communication or a way to get out. Once his daughter makes that device, he's like, there it is, right there. That's how I'm going to kickstart my way out of here.
Yep. This is going to be a very different, very interesting arc. I'm very excited for it. I think Kang has been throughout the Marvel universe a very good big bad. And for the intents and purposes of right now, he's perfect. I don't think there's another bad guy they could have picked to move the story as well as Kang the Conqueror.
One thing I'm also excited about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, he's going to introduce a lot. He is. He's just going to be that gateway for everything that we've been looking for.
I think there is a possibility for the following, and we've talked about this with several previous MCU villains where they killed them off too early or we didn't get to see enough out of them. I think Kang is going to have his due with his own story arc in the MCU. This is the perfect opportunity for Marvel to not permanently kill off a villain.
For the first time.
For the first time.
We haven't seen a lot of villains. The only ones that I think that are floating around out there are Red Skull and Baron Zemo, and I don't think Red Skull's coming back anytime soon. Who knows? They did announce that he's released since the Soul Stone was taken and returned. Red Skull was free to leave. So who knows? How's he getting back? How's he getting anywhere? Because in that Secret Wars, Red Skull plays a big part of that.
He does. He does. I just think it would be a great opportunity for them to say, hey, we'll do his story arc, and then we're going to put him in our back pocket. We can use him in the Secret War storyline. We can use him in other storylines against the X-Men and against the Fantastic Four. Perfect. They can keep using him for Loki if they do a season 3 or 4 of the Loki series.
Yeah, because eventually Loki is going to be put in that chair, I think.
I think it's actually going to be Sylvie that's put in that chair.
Well, because you think that Tom Hiddleston is going to play a bigger role in the actual MCU that we see, not so much of a behind-the-scenes role.
I don't think Loki would want that kind of responsibility. I don't think he would want that job. The Loki that we know of. Sylvie obviously is Loki.
I don't think
she's a different Loki.
I don't think she wants it either. I think she wants the chaos. I think they want to let that chair empty and watch everything unravel around them.
That's exactly why I think it's going to end up being Sylvie, though, because all she's ever known is chaos.
Yeah.
You know, she talked about that in the first season of Loki, where her life, her backstory is wildly different than the Loki that we know.
She's pulled out as a child and grew up jumping around timelines.
So this could be the opportunity for her to finally have some sort of order and finally have some sort of peace. That's just my personal opinion. It's a theory. But I think ultimately she sits in the chair.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, and I'm excited for it.
Couple more weeks.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Kang? Please comment on them below so we can get back to him in an episode of Alter Ego. Be happy to answer him. Anything that you felt we should have touched on that we didn't, let us know. But yeah, we're going to see you guys next week for episode 133, where we're talking about The Last of Us, episode 1 and 2.
Check that out. Amazing series.
Out. All right, y'all. We'll see you around the way.